Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
You know, when I think about future of work, I'm worried but optimistic. I feel like we're in this moment where, at least in the US, it really does feel like the government is trying to take us back 100 years to a moment where there were very few labor laws. People could easily be exploited. People were working 7 days a week. There were no child labor protections, right? So that's happening. But at the same time, I do think that the generations that are coming into work now, like the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, they're not interested in hustle culture. They're not interested in working 80-hour weeks. And that's not just true in the US. That's also true in countries where the workplace cultures have been really intense and extreme.
Managing people shouldn't feel like you're juggling while blindfolded. Lattice can help as your all-in-one HR platform that scales with your business and keeps everyone happy. And we mean everyone. Lattice isn't just for HR teams. Their AI-enhanced platform helps every employee grow in their role, every manager lead fearlessly, and every organization succeed by unlocking the whole team's potential. No trade-offs, no regrets. That's the power of people plus AI. Leave management doesn't have to be painful, impersonal, or keep you buried under a mountain of spreadsheets. Tilt turns life's biggest moments into opportunities for care and connection instead of a paperwork nightmare. And on September 17th, they're making a game-changing announcement that will transform leave of absences from an administrative afterthought into a cultural cornerstone. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast. I'm Hiba, your host and resident hater, and today we're getting into something so juicy you'll want to be sitting down for this episode, or actually maybe this is the perfect time to take that mental health walk. And I'm going to get right into it. This season, it's been one of hard truths, and today's hard truth is the future of work fucked? We've been sold so many different versions of work, from the 4-day work week to AI doing all our boring tasks, and even workplaces that prioritize well-being. But when you zoom out, it's actually a lot of freaking chaos, as we all know. AI is upending industries, geopolitical conflicts and shifts, climate migration, and a labor market that is looking so tough that the president fired the labor statistics chief. Today, we're going to talk about where work is really headed, the good, the bad, and the oh shit, I didn't see that coming, and what it means for HR, leaders, and all the humans caught in the middle. And joining me today is someone I deeply admire and respect, and the perfect guest to help me navigate this topic. Aparna Rae is an educator by training, an innovator by chance, and a disruptor by choice, working at the intersection of equity, data, and systemic organizational change. Over the past decade, she has founded and scaled multiple ventures, from a workplace development program for immigrant and refugee women in the Pacific Northwest to India's first online teacher education platform. She co-founded Future for Us, a platform supporting women of color at work, growing its membership to 20,000 people in just 18 months. And most recently, she was the founder and CEO of Moving Beyond, a DEI tech company based in Seattle, driving inclusion through data-powered solutions. Her work consistently focuses on solving complex equity and people challenges with human-centered design and real-time data. Recognized by Forbes and other leading outlets, she's regarded as a powerful voice in the inclusion workplace transformation. And she just recently took a new role. I can't tell you where it is, but you'll have to stalk her to find out. So Aparna, congratulations and welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
What a bio. I feel like I'm having imposter syndrome reading your bio.
I don't think that's a thing anymore. I think in 2025, we've said we're no longer suffering from the imposter syndrome as women.
That's right. I forgot we let that go. I'll have to revisit that and write that down. I'm so honored, first of all, that you're on the pod. I feel like the first time we met IRL in DuPont Circle Park, right?
That's right.
And we just sat there and chatted about life and the world. And within 5 minutes, I was like, I really like her. You said like 3 things in a row. And I was like, I really like this person.
Same.
We were just geeking out from like the second we met. And then you gave me so many good nuggets. And I like ran home and texted all my friends, like, I just met the coolest person. She taught me all these things. Now I'm doing all this research and I'm going to read these books. And anyways, I'm clearly fangirling over you right now. So thank you for spending time with me today.
Yeah, happy to.
We're going to get right into it. We have a whole episode laid out. We're going to talk about so much. So much. But first, before we get there, I've asked every guest this season on the pod, what's just one general hard truth about work?
Yeah, you know this. I took a sabbatical last year after selling my company, Moving Beyond. And I think a few months in, the realization that I had, which of course, smarter people than I have already had, and that is that most of the work that we do as knowledge workers is just bullshit work. It has very little impact. And in so many of the jobs we hold, we're actually causing harm. And one of the probably most profound books I read on my sabbatical, early in my sabbatical, is called Bullshit Jobs by an anthropologist named David Graeber. And it was such an eye-opening moment because he gave words to the feeling that I've had for 20 years. You know, when your client asks you for the 50th update on a strategy deck and you're like, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I writing 100 memos? You know, why am I filling up my time with work that's not making my life better? It's not making anybody else's life better. And, you know, this is an HR podcast. And I think a lot of the work that HR does actually falls into this. I don't want to say it's bullshit, but let's just say it's not entirely impactful. So that probably is the hard truth that I've been sitting with for the last couple of years. And as a workaholic, it's really shifted my identity.
I'm going to have to go read this right away because I do believe some of the stuff we do in HR is bullshit. Like I talk about that openly where I'm like, I have to do this. Legally, I'm required to do this, or I have to do it because all of you will not remember to do the thing I told you to do. So now I have to have a comms plan that involves multiple touch points to remind you to, I don't know, book a flight to our company retreat. Like some of
Yeah.
the stuff I do, I'm like, I feel like I am like hurt, like I'm just getting everyone wrangling the chaos all the time. And I'm like, this is not an effective use of my time. And so I always encourage people, if you feel like you're doing something that's bullshit, stop and ask yourself, like, what is the actual business impact? And if you can't answer it, maybe it just falls into the bullshit category
Yeah.
and you still got to do it. But then I don't know, at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, this is bullshit, but I did this other really important thing that like isn't tied to any business metrics, but I think changed someone's life. So instead, I'm going to focus on that for today.
Yeah.
That's how I get through it. Okay. Oh, I'm adding that to my book list, Bullshit Jobs, David Graeber, you said. I'm so excited.
It's
Okay.
so good. And I think you could just listen to it on audiobooks if that's your thing.
I don't, I'm a reader, so we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll come back to an episode and we can do like a follow-up called Bullshit Jobs where we just only talk about it. Yeah. Okay. When we first started talking about this episode, though, I was like, there's so much I want to talk about with you. Like, what do you think are some topics? And we really got into this, like, is the future of work fucked? And so I want to start there. When you look at the future of work, which is a phrase, by the way, that I hate, do you see optimism, doom, or really something in between?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if your audience knows this, but you sent me like 30 questions for this conversation. Yeah, I think, you know, when I think about future of work, I'm worried but optimistic. I feel like we're in this moment where, at least in the US, it really does feel like the government is trying to take us back 100 years to a moment where there were very few labor laws. People could easily be exploited. People were working 7 days a week. There were no child labor protections, right? So that's happening. But at the same time, I do think that the generations that are coming into work now, like the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, they're not interested in hustle culture. They're not interested in working 80-hour weeks. And that's not just true in the US. That's also true in countries where the workplace cultures have been really intense and extreme, like Japan, like Korea. I certainly think a lot of workers in India are saying, no, I don't want to work Saturdays. You know, I don't want to be working until 9 o'clock every night. And especially because a lot of that time at work is just BS, like filler stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I feel this so much in my soul. Gen Alpha scares me. My nephews are Gen Alpha, and sometimes they'll say things, and I'm like, oh my God. how are they ever gonna like how are they ever gonna be at a job and like navigate conflict? Like why? I mean, they're like 12, so I should calm down. But at the same time, they are pushing me to like really think about what is my relationship with work and what do I put up with? And is that something I should continue doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and they, like they're not suffering from the imposter syndrome. They think that they could be the VP. Like, look at younger millennials and Gen Z. Literally, they're like, "Oh, why haven't I gotten promoted?" And I'm like, "Oh, because you literally can't write a grammatically correct email, right?"
Yeah,
But at the same time, they're like, "I could be the VP."
I love
And
it.
as their boss, you're like, I really don't think this is going to be your reality for at least a decade, right? So they don't suffer from the imposter syndrome. But I think that the other thing that they rightly recognize is that spending all of our days at work is taking away from our mental health. It's taking away from being civically engaged. It's taking away from being in community. And yeah, they're happy to leave work early on a nice day and sit in the park with their friends. And they should.
Honestly, that
We all
sounds
should.
lovely. We all should. That's the rallying cry. I don't know. I feel like a lot of things crystallized for me in the workplace, especially after like losing my brother and my father, where I'm just like, this is this is not it. Like, what's it is the time I spend with my family, the times I spend with my friends. You're right, the time in community, the time where I'm helping people understand what's going on in the world. Like, those are the things that bring me joy. And yes, I love my job, but that does not mean that like that is all I care about and that's all I want to do 24/7. I want to go like live a life so that when I'm not on this earth anymore, I know at least I like tried my hardest to like fulfill every wish and dream I had had. But I
Yeah.
just and I think a lot of people are feeling that way too as we're looking at the world and just how serious things feel right now. It's like there's this insane cognitive dissonance, it feels too, between all of us that show up on LinkedIn. Like the people who are like posting on LinkedIn and then like what's actually happening in the world. I'm so confused by it. And like one of the biggest topic points has been really around AI. And I know I can't get through an episode without talking about AI, but I have to know like how do you think AI will actually like reshape this global labor market versus like all these people who are hyping it. Like every time I'm
Mm,
online, it's like someone is hyping another AI tool. What do you think is going on?
yeah. Oh, the hype around AI is, yeah, it's pretty intense, right? And I think even from the time that we connected, which was only 2 months ago or 2.5 months
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
the hype is hyping even harder. I think a lot of the hype right now is about Gen AI. It's the LLMs. I think the mainstream folks discovering Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT. Um, and I do think that even what's being hyped right now is going to lead to a loss of entry level white collar work, right?
Yep.
Knowledge workers.
Yep.
Um, this is something that you're now starting to see big consulting firms start to worry about because you don't need entry level people to take notes, to draft talking points, to write those memos and the strategy decks, right? You're seeing it in marketing communications where, yeah, like AI can draft content for you. A human being is still needed for it to be something that's going to be sticky with whoever the audience is. But the drafting, the ideating, you don't need a person for that anymore. Even in engineering, my partner works in engineering, and now you have these AI agents that can deploy code without ever interfacing with developer tools,
Yeah.
which to me is so wild, right? Because these tools are not being built for developers; they're being built for managers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think we are going to start to see job loss. We're already seeing it. I live in Seattle, and Microsoft has done multiple layoffs just this year of middle management, of non-engineering roles. I think something like 10,000 jobs
Yeah.
just this year. That said, I do think that we're going to need both highly skilled and unskilled blue collar work, right? Or what's been traditionally called blue collar work, construction, agriculture. And we're already starting to see younger generations that are choosing to go into blue collar professions,
Mhm.
right? They're choosing not to go to university, or they're choosing to go to university in like for the trades, for construction or for like maritime or agriculture. And with global politics, and I think the US's move away from social safety nets for the general population, and two, I think shifting away from regulation. I do think we have potentially a scary situation where there's going to be a large mass of knowledge workers that are unemployed and or unemployable. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not skilled to work in construction, right?
I'm definitely not.
I'm not. I don't have those skills. And we're probably going to see a lot of people that are middle class right now move into poverty, right? And we've already seen something like an 18% increase in the poverty rate in the United States over the past year. And when all of that happens, it cheapens the value of labor overall. And so we're going to find ourselves in a situation where formerly middle-class people are going to be willing to do any kind of work to keep a roof over their heads and feed themselves and their kids. And that, I think, is the scary, not even long-term impact, right? Like potentially 5 to 10 years out impact of AI.
Yeah.
Absent regulation, right? AI absent regulation, which is the trajectory that we're on today. It doesn't mean that can't change in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, the regulation piece is so interesting because, like, we saw all the tech people at the presidential inauguration, and it was just like a very interesting cultural moment where people were like, I can't believe, like, tech is supposed to be super liberal. Like, I can't believe they would do this, da da da. And I was like, you can't believe they don't want to be regulated. Like, what do you mean you can't believe they wouldn't do this?
Right. And like the people that say that, I think they either don't know or they have already forgotten the fights that were happening, the legal battles from the 90s, where companies like Microsoft were helping to rewrite labor laws, right? Like you work in HR and so many of your listeners work in HR adjacent spaces, but have people thought about why is it that entry-level tech workers can work any number of hours a week? Right? Whereas in almost any other industry, entry-level workforce is hourly, non-salaried, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically every other industry, right? Like you have to rise into the managerial class to become salaried and exempt from overtime. And so why is it that tech workers work 80 hours weeks? That was right. Those are changes to the labor law that happened with tech titans of the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
Right. Going to court and saying, our workforce should be allowed to work as much as we want them to work without paying them overtime.
First of all, I have so many thoughts spiraling in my head that certainly you will get 15 follow-up texts from me about this. But I mean, you're not wrong. Like they gain incentive by aligning themselves with whoever is in power. And I think it was interesting watching the amount of people that were like shocked by that. They were like at the inauguration, the tech, Microsoft, Amazon, Elon, everyone were sitting in the front row right behind the president. And they were like, oh my God, like before the cabinet, like that's where they are. And it was just really interesting. So I was like, well, I mean, what do you think? Like everyone's attributing like AI similar to the .com boom. They're going to, or bigger, honestly. They're like more millionaires have now been made billionaires in like the last few years because of AI. And I was like, of course, what do you think? Like, they don't want us to regulate it because when we regulate it, then we impede on their ability to accumulate massive amounts of wealth.
Yeah.
But it's hard seeing that and then knowing that the average day-to-day of a middle-class American is going to become substantially worse.
Yeah.
Reconciling that, I think, has been the hardest part, honestly, for me as a knowledge worker, because I'm like, you're right, I don't have any trade. I can't go fix HVAC. I can't go do construction. I could if I went to school and learned those things, but I did not go to school. I went to school. That was a liberal arts degree. Like, come on. I went to school to like write papers about the Middle East and politics and the world. I didn't go to school to learn those trades. And I think it'll be interesting watching the percent of people who forego traditional college, four-year college, and instead go into trade-based that type of work, because I think that's where the security will be in the next few years.
Yeah,
And
I think so too.
Kind of terrifying. And it's so interesting as we talk about AI and how it's going to disrupt the labor and cheapen our value of labor, essentially. Because I think the other part is at the beginning, people were like, oh, AI is so great. You're going to have so much time to like think and dream in your work. And I'm even guilty of saying it too, because that's how I envision I would use AI. But do you think that actually using AI could lead to this 4-day work week utopia we all desperately want potentially? Or is it going to end up being something more like in China, how they have the 996, which I had to Google this, the 996 grind culture?
Yeah. So today I don't see either CEOs or politicians moving us toward a 4-day work week, right? No one, no one anymore, right? This was the conversation a few years ago,
It
but
was.
no one today is talking about using AI to have us doing fewer hours at work, right? In fact, like all the conversation is about it turning us into super workers. I had somebody, an exec, talk about how AI is going to make educators super teachers. And I don't know a single K-12 educators that wants to be a super teacher. They want more resources.
Yeah.
But AI doesn't equal more resources, right? And the 996 grind culture that I think China is famous for, India is famous for, Japan is famous for, we see that now with AI startups. I've seen so many job descriptions pop up on Reddit, which is like my source of most truth, where you see these job descriptions that I'm like, I don't like what employment lawyer for this company signed off on this job description, where they'll say, don't work here if you're not excited about working Monday through Saturday and, having all meals in the office and being at the office all day. Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah. And we're seeing the CEOs of tech companies, especially the AI startups, saying that, as part of acquisition emails that are saying, hey, like you should continue to stay at this company only if you're excited to just grind.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I've always worked at early stage startups. I've done 4. I love it. I, I'm at the state of my life where I'm just like, I think I could give my all for 4 to 6 hours and it would be enough for a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, that's where I'm at mentally, honestly.
I mean, I'm not there myself, right? There's only so much our brains can do. Beyond a certain point, we're actually not that productive. We're not that innovative. And so do I hope that AI and technologies like AI move us towards a 4-day work week? Yes. But I also think that, like, regardless of these technologies, we should be moving towards 4-day work weeks because of the economic surplus that our labor is creating,
Yeah.
right? Like that should be the benefit. That should be the societal benefit of the surplus that our labor is creating today.
Now, instead, it's work harder to make more money for those that are already drowning in their wealth.
Yeah. I
It's
wish they would drown in their wealth. Um,
no death threats on this, okay? That's not what we're doing. That's not what that was.
okay, fine. Yes. We wish all CEOs a short and healthy life.
Or just stub toes. I don't want to go with death. I just go stub toes. My least favorite thing in a day is when you stub your toe. It hurts so bad. You're like hunched over in pain. That's what I wish upon my enemies most days. Stub
Okay.
toes and loose stools.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm allowed to say these things, okay? It's our podcast, but no, it's just so interesting because I've had this debate with my CEO so many times about the 4-day work week and like how much work people can get done in a day because I'm like the average person is probably productive for 4 to 6 hours. They've like done that study where like
Yes.
your brain cannot handle the context shifting. And my CEO is such a fan of being like, well, I don't know if that's true. And I'm like, I don't want to have this discussion. We have this discussion like every 3 months where we love like kind of battling each other sometimes. And this is one of our battles is just like, he thinks like people can sustain hard work for many hours in a row. And I'm very much like, I think people can sustain hard work for 4 to 6 hours max. And then their brain needs time to like replenish, recharge, and re-innovate. Because if
Yeah.
you're constantly maxed out every day, you're never going to have how are you going to have original thoughts?
I mean, you should ask him if that was true. Why did David Beckham and Sue Bird retire? They should still be playing.
That's actually
They're only in their 40s, right? Maybe I think David Beckham's older, right?
yeah.
Like why do
Yeah.
yeah, why do players retire in their 30s and 40s? If that was true, right? If working endless hours didn't have a toll on your mind and your body, then why do players retire?
Yeah.
Because they simply cannot perform at those levels. And I think the same, honestly, I think some of that is also true for knowledge workers, right? How are you going to perform at that level year after year, decade after decade?
I think it's like impossible. Listen, I like consider myself, I would call myself smart. I'd say I'm smart. I've always been like academically motivated. I'm stupid about things, but I'm smart about the things that I really care about, right? I would call myself a smart person, but even I tire just doing work for that many hours in a row where it's like constant brain strain where I don't have time to go be inspired by the world or be inspired by something I read. And I think the thing, especially for HR people, that's going to define us in the next like 10 to 15 years is I think the best HR leaders are going to be ones that are curious and are trying to like be agile and move with the times. And you can't move with the times. You can't like actually expend the brain energy to go figure out a creative solution to the very big problem you're facing if you are
Yeah.
constantly drowning in task after task after task. So
Yeah.
like when I think of AI, I think automate my tasks so I can actually go dream. I'm not thinking automate my tasks so I can go do more work.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah.
think like the average CEO would say, no, now do more.
Yeah. True.
That makes me so sad. Okay. Pivoting for a second, like I don't want to talk about AI anymore because literally you can come back for another episode on that. It's what all of us are talking about. I want to talk about second geopolitics. Like how do you see geopolitics from trade wars to climate migration impacting how and where we work?
Yeah, that's a hard one, right? I think for your audience, I just have to say I'm not an economist. That's not my
Same.
area of expertise. I would say, on the big picture, right? Migration makes for labor markets that are more dynamic, but also potentially more volatile. And we've already been seeing climate related migration for a
Mhm.
while now, especially from the global south to the global north. And I think it's fair to say that it hasn't been particularly well received, right? Like in North America and Western Europe, and like even in countries in Europe where they desperately need the labor,
Yeah.
they're pretty antagonistic towards Black and brown people that are doing the work. And I saw that firsthand. I didn't fully believe it, but last summer I went to Malta and Italy and Spain and Portugal, and they don't look kindly upon the migrant labor that are doing work that nobody from their country wants to be doing. And I think the same is true in the US as
Yep.
well,
Yeah.
right? We see that in the US, and Canadians think that they're above it, but they're not really above it either.
No.
They're not particularly kind towards the migrant labor that's in their countries. And so I think it's safe to say that, like, whenever there's an influx of new people, you need policy to support the fallout, from the changes to the labor market, as well as like managing the anti-immigrant sentiment, right? And the anti-immigrant sentiment is going to continue to exist if people don't feel cared for, if people don't feel like they can afford their rent and they can afford their food and that their kids are being educated well in the public schools. I also think, and this is so true in the US, but I don't think only in the US, where we also need progressive policy and we need progressive revenue, which I think, is shorthand for we have to tax the rich so that we can invest in workforce training and upskilling and climate resilience to sustain economic stability. Like, what is the future, let's say 10 years out, where you have all of this technology that, by the way, requires massive amounts of power,
Yep.
right? Without our currently our grids can't take the load,
No.
right?
Yep.
And
They're saying California will have a drought, right? Because of AI.
yeah, well, California already has
Or,
drought,
yeah,
and that
already,
was
sorry.
before AI was mainstream. And yeah, what are the choices that we're going to be making, right? Are we going to choose to take power away from people's homes and schools and send it to data centers? I think that already is the reality in a lot of rural areas where there are data centers where their water supply is being impacted, their power supply is being impacted. So I think that there's a lot for us to be thinking about and considering. And in the US, like we're going in the wrong direction. We're going in the wrong direction. So that plus, I think in the next 10 years, you asked about like where we work.
Yeah.
In the next 10 years, I do think that we'll see an end to the influencer culture around digital nomads and remote work. At the end of the day, like you only need so many consultants and coaches and influencers. Like the market can't sustain it. And we already know, like the data already shows that most coaches never break $50,000 in revenue or something, right? Like it's such a nominal amount that they earn, in the lifetime of their practice. So my sense is that climate change, absent government support, government intervention, is going to force a lot of people to actually be more rooted physically, because that's where we have our support systems, right? So
Yeah.
I do think that even though a lot of work can happen remotely, it's not going to, or at least we're not going to be moving around as much in North America and Western Europe, because our governments are not doing enough, and we're going to need our neighbors and we're going to need our community.
It's wild because during 2020, it feels like everybody was a digital nomad. I mean, we kind of all were, right? And like every influencer was like moving to Dubai, and they're like, you're not taxed in Dubai. And I'm like, as somebody who's been to Dubai, I would personally not want to live there.
Right. Because also like the Gulf, right? Like the oil rich countries in the Middle East are built on top of slave labor. Modern day slavery is happening there.
Yeah, listen, I'm from the Middle East. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not living there. Like that
Yeah.
is a hard no for me. But I mean, like going to Dubai was like very eye-opening to see. Like now I follow influencers who all moved to Dubai. And they're
Yes.
like, it's so great here. Here are all the things we could do. And I'm like, as somebody who has been there and seen the disparity and the people they imported to do, again, like you said, those tasks and how they're treated by the people who live there and the people who have like moved there, I'm just like, this is not something I want to be a part of. I never liked it. I always felt like the disparity between those who had so much and those who had so little was so vast that it just like made me uncomfortable to exist there.
Yeah.
I was just like, these people are not being treated well. Like,
Yeah.
anyways, that was,
And that was true like 25 years ago. I also grew up in the Gulf, right? And I was just like, oh, even 25 years ago, it was kind of gross. And now it's just on steroids.
yeah, my mom is always like, you're always so unhappy when we like had to go to do stuff in Dubai. My mom was like, you're always so unhappy here. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't like it. I just like see people struggling. And then I see these like super wealthy people walking around with their Birkin bags. And I'm like, come on. Like this,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good to exist in that society that just feels like so unfair. And I do think like what you said back to AI, it's going to exacerbate that gap even more.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be tough. Like, do you honestly think governments are actually ready for like the social and economic disruption that AI could bring?
No.
Oof.
I don't think so. Our government is not. I
Definitely not.
think the Gulf countries, right? When I think about like what people are planning in like the Line project in Saudi Arabia, for instance, I'm just like, homies, where are you going to get water? Literally, fine, like you'll find the steel and the glass and the building supplies and all of the other things, but human beings require water for sustenance, right? Like we're not alive if we don't have access to clean drinking water. And so water alone is, I'm just like, water question mark. Have we answered the water problem?
Water question mark is my new favorite quote.
Yeah, water question mark. That's it. You can put it on a t-shirt. I hate it here. Water. But I think there are a handful of countries in Europe that have, I think, limited global political sway that are thinking about it, right? There's lots more regulation there. I think China is ahead of pretty much everybody in raising the socioeconomic standard and heavily investing in climate mitigation, right? So even though they're the largest emitter in the world, they also have the largest amount of renewables on their grid. Like
Wild.
in
I didn't
China,
know that.
huh?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have the largest number of renewables on their grid, wind and solar. And I mean, like China is, for instance, like one of the cool things that they have in China is they have electric cars with swappable batteries, right? So you get in a taxi, the taxi is running out of charge. They pull into what's like a gas station and they just swap out the battery. And then you're good to go. You're
Buff.
good to go.
Yeah.
Right. So they have these like interoperable features in something like a vehicle. Can you imagine? We don't even have that on our computers and our cell phones anymore in the US, right? Like no one's swapping batteries. You're sending your laptop back to Apple where they're going to spend 5 days ungluing your computer to change something that 10 years ago you could have changed on your own. So I think the long and the short answer is, are governments ready? No, the governments are not ready. In fact, I feel like the governments are almost complicit with the CEOs of these like Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies in bringing about like the kind of like, I don't want to say economic collapse or societal collapse, but like pain for the average working person.
Mhm.
And have they really thought through what happens to our world when so many people are suffering so much?
No,
No,
they have not.
They have
literally
not.
have not.
No.
Oof, we've all had those days. Like, remember when that all-star employee bailed with zero warning? Or when you found out half your managers were writing reviews based on vibes? We call those regrets. And yeah, they could have been avoided with some help from Lattice, the first HR platform where people plus AI succeed together. Lattice's suite of AI-powered tools helps everyone, not just HR, thrive and lead fearlessly. Whether you're trying to boost performance, engage your team, or finally stop second-guessing HR decisions, Lattice has your back. Ready to leave those regrets in the dust? Check out Lattice at lattice.com/no regrets. That's lattice.com/no regrets. Let's be honest, is outsourced leave management just a fancy way of saying you've outsourced the humanity right out of it? Tilt is here to fix that. Their AI-powered platform handles all the admin tasks that eat into your time, like payroll updates, compliance tracking, status changes, so that you can actually focus on supporting your people through life's big, messy, and human moments. And on September 17th, they're dropping something that will turn leave from an afterthought into your secret weapon for culture and strategy. So mark your calendars because Tilt is keeping HR trusted, strategic, and human first.
No, because like you were talking about this at the very beginning, like child labor laws, like Kentucky, I think, got rid of the age to
Yeah.
work. I think you can work as young as like 11 now. And then they also like got rid of, don't fact check me, listeners. I think this is what happened. I need to go read these. But also one state in the South also got rid of the like right to have a lunch break. And I'm just sitting here thinking like that doesn't actually set us up for success in the long term.
Yeah.
That like hurts the day-to-day person who's doing the work at its core. And I'm almost like, I don't know. I don't think the average person can endure much longer, honestly.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, right? Like the other side is talking really openly about plans that they've had in the works for 50 years, right? And they're talking openly about the fact that we're going to deport undocumented workers and or people with green cards and or potentially citizens. And who's going to make up the balance of the work that they're doing now? Right? They're talking openly about the fact that like kids can be working on farms again. And in states like Iowa that has a big farming industry.
I think they will reduce the age.
They did that, right? They said they remove the minimums for people under 18 and how many hours a week you can work. And so at the end of the day, right, this is, I think, like one of the very first things I said is like our government is trying to move us back 100 years when it comes to labor laws. On the other hand, I will say this. Look, I think that there are a lot of really smart, really dedicated people that are pushing back. They're fighting in the courts. They're fighting on the ground. So that does give me hope, right? Like, I don't know that it's going to be all gloom and doom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, oh God, I wish I had a funny joke to make right now, but I don't. Okay. What we've talked like really tactical bits and pieces, things impacting work. If you zoom out, like 50-foot view, what's the most under discussed force shaping the future of work right now?
Climate change.
Mhm.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, it's climate change. Yeah. And I'm not just, thinking about like severe weather events where people are getting washed away in floods and hurricanes, which is horrific.
Oh,
Which
absolutely
is
tragic.
right, because I think for most people in the US, and we talked about this when we were sitting on like the park bench in DuPont Circle, when people think about folks washing away in a flood, they're thinking about Pakistan.
Yeah.
They're thinking about someplace far away from here, certainly not here. Right. And that's happened in the last 6 months. We've all read the news about that.
Yeah.
But I just think that the fact that every summer is hotter than the last. This is a fact. Nobody even has to fact check me because it's literally like front page of New York Times. Right? Just the heat makes us less productive. Being exposed to warmer or hotter than usual temperatures relative to where we live, right? This is relative to where we live. So in Seattle, 85 degrees is going to make me more angry. It's going to make me more volatile. Maybe 85 degrees in Phoenix isn't going to make the population of Phoenix more volatile. 120 degrees might do it for them. Heat disrupts our sleep. It reduces our cognitive performance. It impairs our judgment. You see many more accidents happen when it's hotter than usual where you live and work. And it's worse for our mental health, right? Like we see a lot more substance abuse. We see like worsened mood disorders like anxiety and depression. And so even if you're not working in the field, right? And so for your listeners that are like, I'm the CHRO of a tech company, great friend. Like your employees don't have to be working in the fields for you to start to pay attention to what's happening with the weather, because just the heat alone, just the heat alone is having a negative impact on your employees. And by the way, like the solution isn't air conditioning, because the air conditioning is only going to cool 20 degrees or so. And
Yeah.
so if it's 120 degrees outside, air conditioning maybe brings it down to 100 degrees, maybe 95 degrees. That's still really hot. That's still really hot. Just commuting to work on a hot day is going to have people showing up to work more agitated. And then there is this piece just around like emissions that come from work, like going to work.
Yeah.
Having buildings, HVAC systems.
I remember when we did not commute for 2020. Remember when like March 2020 it all shut
Yeah.
down, and then California was like releasing those maps about like how much better the
Air
environment
quality.
was, the air
Yeah.
quality, as people
Yeah.
were commuting, and I was like, y'all, are we having the same conversation here? Like when people have return to office mandates, I'm hesitant to bring up the climate piece of it, but I feel like I should be more vocal about that too, because I'm like, we should be talking about that. Like we only have this one Earth. And like the joke that I make, and I think I made it with you, we were sitting in that park, is like, yeah, we only have this Earth. You and I are on it. The billionaires, when they get sick of us, they'll just go to Mars. They will leave us. They will go to space as they have been going to space, and we will be on this planet that is boiling hot and cannot endure what we have done to it. And
Yeah.
I think that, to me, I've like tried to do my best to actually understand more around climate change in the last few years, to understand how to speak about it, because I do think it is going to impact work. Like you said, people show up more agitated. It's hotter. Like I was just thinking the summer storms this summer were so much worse than any storms I had ever seen. And I'm in Virginia. And like it was
Mhm.
like an ongoing conversation in my family group text where like the storms are so bad. I would lose power like for a few minutes every other day when the storms were terrible. And I was like, okay, now imagine that they get even worse, because that's where we're headed.
Yeah. Well, do you remember the heat dome a couple of months ago
Yes,
in
because I
your
had to go
area?
up to New York or something during the heat dome. And I was like, great, I'm leaving DC, which is hot. I'm going to New York, which is just as hot.
Yeah. Right. And so one of the other things that happens when you have high heat like that is people literally die.
Yes.
People's hearts, especially older people, like their heart stops working. Kids, their hearts can just stop working because we can't keep our bodies cool enough, right? And so, yeah, I think climate change is so underrated. It's wild to me that almost no one in the HR community, like I would say the mainstream HR community, is talking about the impact of climate change
I
on the
feel
world.
like now I need to go talk about it more because I've been doing all this research. I've been like, we, I mean, I come back to, I just like took a sip of water question mark. When it's so hot and you are dehydrated, you can die. As somebody who's been hospitalized for dehydration, I
Yeah.
know how bad it is. Now imagine like when none of us have access to clean water or water in general, it's so hot. How are we supposed to do work? Like, it's just not, it has an impact, a real impact on our day to day and how we show up. And so I
Yeah.
think if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't really think this impacts HR, it does. It does, full stop, because people can't show up to work. I was
Right.
going up to New York for events, and it was so hot that the train couldn't go as fast as it wanted to go. So we were delayed for everything
For sure.
because it was so hot. And that's like, I'm in an AC little vestibule taking me up to New York. Now imagine the people who don't have that and are trying to get somewhere. It's just hot. Like, there's so much more to say about this. Maybe you come back for another episode called The Intersection of Climate Change and Work, and we talk about that
It's
again.
like climate change X bullshit jobs.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, we're going to manifest it right now. I manifest this every episode. I have like so many great conversations with people. I'm like, we have more to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about like, we've done the macro. I've taken so much of your time already, but I want to talk a little bit about like labor and lifestyle, because I think this is really interesting. Like, what do you think is the likelihood of like mass job displacement versus mass job transformation? So something about AI that everyone's been talking about, and even me, is like, we will reskill people. We have like 1 billion people in the world that need to be reskilled, and then we'll have job transformation. And
Yeah.
you've touched a little bit on job displacement, but like, what do you think is the likelihood over here?
Today, I would say we're heading towards displacement. Transformation requires that governments are working with and for the people, right? And I think they're not working for us right now. In most of the world, they're not working for the people. That needs to
Yeah.
happen. I also think that, we're talking about climate change. If we are, as humans, gonna survive and thrive on this planet, we are gonna need for a few things to happen, right? We need less consumerism in the global north. We buy too much crap.
That we do.
We're doing too much of everything. That has to go down. We have to make global reparations. We have to make global reparations because the trillions of dollars is going to take to build infrastructure in the global south to become climate resilience is still going to require us burning fossil fuels in the near term, right?
Yeah.
The global south, I mean, even just like building wind farms and solar farms, that still requires industry that's burning fossil fuels today to build that infrastructure, right? And so it's going to require a lot of pieces, and it's going to require a kind of global consensus around redistributing wealth that we have not seen yet.
Mm. That should be that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting because you're talking about like displacement, and that also makes me think about like, will we ever have career stability again?
Oof. Yeah, I saw that question and I was like, I don't know, but let me talk about like the wealth redistribution part, right? Because when people hear that, they're like, how is that possible? Like, we can never do it. Okay, forget at the global level. Like, let's just look organizationally. How, right? What is the income distribution in any organization?
That people at the top make the most.
Heavy, right? Like, heavy on the top. We're not even doing or willing to do the redistribution at the company level, like relative to the value you're generating for your employer. Are you earning relative to the value that you're generating?
What a fascinating question.
Even in tech, even if you're making $1 million a year, even if you're making $1 million a year, which is not unheard of, very common for an engineer, for instance, with 20 years of work experience, you're making $1 million a year.
I've given.
Are
that
you
offer.
generating? only $1 million worth of value for your company, or are you generating 50 or $100 million, right? So you're not even getting compensated for the value that you're generating. What is the value that HR generates in an organization, right? Some of the least well-paid roles in any company, right? Some of the least well-paid, $18 an hour to be like an HR specialist, $25 an hour to be an HR specialist. What is the value you create when you improve retention? What is the value that you create when you have the kind of onboarding that creates long-term stickiness for a new employee? What is the value that you create? Is it $25 an hour value?
No, it's so much more.
It's so much more.
It's so much more. It makes me so mad to see HR being like the Carta releases its report every year or every 6 months now, actually, about the state of compensation. And one of the things that always stands out for me at the executive level is HR is most commonly the most underpaid and the most under-equitized. Did I say it correctly? Like they get the least amount of equity, even though, in my opinion, and everyone on this podcast has heard me say, after your IP, your actual intellectual property that your company generates, your second most important asset, and actually might be your first most important asset, is your
people.
And the one person directly responsible for those people and their success is HR.
Yeah.
I do believe it's HR. Like, you cannot convince me it's someone's manager. You cannot convince me it's the CEO. It is HR. And so when I see HR people, historically, we're always the least paid executive. We always have the least amount of equity on a cap table. It actually breaks my heart. And it makes me think maybe if we were paid more fairly, would we then also take that energy and redistribute the wealth in our organizations?
Yeah. And so then to your question about career stability, I think if you work in HR, I don't know that you have career stability.
Oh my God, why? Why would you say that? Why would you scare me?
Because look, already you have bots that can do like first round interviews and phone screens.
But they're not great. Yes.
Maybe they're not great right now, but they're only getting better. Like they are getting better and better and better. And especially if you're HR in a company that is hiring tons of people, right? Like hundreds or thousands of people a year. Instead of needing 25 HR specialists, now you can do that work with 3 people.
I do. I have said on this podcast before, I think HR teams of the future will be very lean.
Yeah, HR teams, right? So in terms of career stability, somebody who's starting off in HR today, they're probably not going to be in HR 10 years from now because there just are not going to be that many jobs, right? That's on top of like technology that's already, people are taking the mental health therapy use cases and building agents that can step in as an ombudsman.
Yeah.
Right. Now you don't need the person anymore. And of course, like we've already been automating like mundane BS tasks for the past decade. That's only going to get better. So I think when I think about job stability, I don't know that blanket there's any profession outside of service jobs, outside of caregiving jobs that are really going to have stability, because even the engineers that are building AI are getting fired when they're done building it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, the people that built the pyramids, they would just get buried with the pyramid, with the pharaoh, right? You built it, now you're buried with it. Like the priests are just buried, right? So there's a little bit of that happening. But I think that if you're in working in renewables, I think you're going to experience stability. But I think the greatest stability is going to be in jobs where, right, again, they're the least sexy jobs. It's caregiving, right? We have an aging population and the replacement rate is not nearly what it used to be, right? Like you and I, we don't have kids.
Yeah.
We're not planning families, right? That like 50 years ago, people of our generation were. That's what they were doing at our age. And I don't know, I haven't seen a robot change a diaper. So
we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That's fascinating you say that, because so many people are like, who's going to care for you when you're old? Like, that's why people have kids. And I was like, what? That's not a good reason to have children, for someone to care for me when I get old. Like, I mean, where my mother is caregiver, my sister does the Lord's work with her, and it's hard. It's a hard job. It is a full-time job.
Yeah.
So maybe not sexy, but maybe sexy to a lot of people. Like, I feel like I'd be a pretty good caregiver if I didn't want to do HR anymore.
I know for sure I would not. I have no patience. I have so little patience for that, right? But those are
Okay.
the jobs that are going to be recession proof. They're going to, they cannot, a robot cannot do it. And I think the question that I am often sitting with is, are we going to continue to cheapen the value of that labor, or are we going to increase the value of that labor?
I would love for the reality to be we increase the value of labor, but
Yeah.
I just don't, in our current state, do not see that happening.
Yeah.
And that's like a really hard truth. This whole episode is hard truths. Honestly, I'm like, I need to go journal for 3 hours after this because like I have a lot of issues that I need to talk to my journal about. This is the dove. There's a lot to unpack here. Okay, I have an interesting question I want to ask you. I put this on there and then I actually laughed reading what you had written because I don't know if I want to broach this topic. How might AI change not just what we do for work, but how we live outside of it?
Oof.
I'm so scared. I'm so scared to hear this answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I wrote was AI potentially changes how we interact one to one. And I can't think of a single week since the beginning of summer where somebody hasn't talked to me about a person they know or person they work with having an AI girlfriend or an AI friend that they need to be chatting with constantly, right?
Sorry,
Which
I'm freaking out.
I mean, I think it's a little creepy. Personally, I think it's a little creepy, right? I'm not going to get an AI husband. I find it
Me
hard
neither.
to believe that I would have an AI husband. No, I definitely like the flesh human husband.
Also, AI just like agrees with everything you say. So I'm
Also,
like,
AI agrees with everything that you say, right? And so, what is it going to do to human interaction where if I'm spending so much time with somebody that's like, Heba, you're beautiful, which you are.
thank
Heba,
you.
you're so smart, which you are,
Thank you.
right?
What am I going to do?
And then you're talking to me, and I'm like, oh, you just said something that's really dumb. What is that going to do to our interactions, right? Because the reality is that humans ouch each other, right? We like literally and metaphorically we stub our toes. And so what happens when you're used to interacting with something that makes you think you're amazing?
Yeah.
That's hyping you all of the time.
Yeah.
That's not creating conflict. And yeah, so I have some questions about, right? And this is again, right? Like I keep coming back to regulation, and we've already lost this battle with social media.
Yeah.
I think honestly, it would be great if it was regulated and then you couldn't get on Instagram for more than an hour a day.
Yeah. It has such an impact on people's mental health.
It has such an impact on people's mental health, right? And not even from a productivity standpoint. Forget productivity, right? Like we don't need young women and girls getting more suicidal because of the content they're being served, right? Like we don't need young men, for instance, to be getting served, radical right propaganda and tons of like sexually explicit content, which is what they're getting served right now, right? So absent regulation, I don't know, are we in a world where everybody has their like AI bestie and then you don't have your real life bestie because your real life bestie is telling you that you need to get your act together?
Honestly, it's like so terrifying for me because we're already like conflict averse as a society. I need to go find 80 books on this because I love conflict. I don't understand what it is. When I'm in the thick of it, I'm like, this is fun. Like,
Yeah.
like we're going to fight. I'm the youngest of 4 children in a very loud, like Arab family, which like basically we all could conflict with each other. We all have conflict with each other all the time and we resolve it mostly healthy, sometimes unhealthy, where we like need to take a pause and not talk to each other for a few days and then we come back together and we're fine. But I've always loved conflict. And my biggest thing in the workplace is people are so afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
They're so afraid to say, I disagree with you or I'm having a different experience than you. We're like taught to just ingest the feedback and take it And I'm
Yeah.
always like, no, like do the feedback, like push back
Yeah.
on the feedback. My CEO knows when he gives me feedback, I'll say, thank you for this feedback. I disagree with you and here's why. And we'll go back and forth about it. But like the average person, he loves conflict, I love conflict. We work well together. The average person does not. So now you're talking to AI, which just continues to reinforce to you that you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. No one ever challenges your thinking. And then you end up in an environment where potentially someone does challenge you. How are you going to respond?
Yeah.
You no longer have the practice or the tools or anything to support you on that. And I talk about this a lot, like parenting in the 90s was very much like conflict in private. So a lot of people grew up in the
Mhm.
90s not observing healthy conflict within their own families. And
Yeah.
so then you get into the workplace and you have no system or framework for how conflict actually gets resolved. Then you
Yeah.
have AI, which is never going to have conflict with you. And are we just losing that skill as like a society?
We might if we, right, like if we let it become the end all be all. I mean, but already I've seen mental health professionals talk about like AI related psychosis.
Yes, I read an article about that once a week. It
Yeah.
terrifies me.
It terrifies me. It terrifies me, right? So I don't know. I mean, for whoever is listening, I would say, we need some healthy guardrails around the use of a technology whose long-term impact we don't really understand, much the same way in which I would be wary of taking medication whose long-term impact I didn't understand.
I love that. Okay, I want to end the episode on hard truths. I feel like this whole episode has been hard truths and hot takes, but I want to end with some very pointed ones. And let's just get into it.
Okay.
What's one hard truth you wish every HR leader would accept right now about the next 20 years of work?
Oof. Okay. Well, I really hope I don't get a ton of hate mail for saying this, but I would say today HR is the weakest link. And I would say HR in most companies is so spineless and so unskilled. Like they're neither making workers' lives better, nor are they helping their organizations become more resilient in the face of everything that's coming. And I would say in the next 20 years, right, the next 2 decades, if HR leaders want their organizations to survive and thrive, then they really have to pour into culture work that actually works. And they need to stop, right, the BS trainings, the
Hmm.
history month celebrations, a lot of the superficial stuff that actually adds no value to the lives of workers, to like the well-being of the organization as a whole. And they kind of, I think they really need to lean hard into being strategic, using data, and having a voice at the executive table. Like you said earlier, HR executives are usually the least well compensated,
Yep.
even though they're responsible for,
The biggest scope of work.
well, they're responsible for the humans. And without the humans, there is no company,
Yeah. There's no.
especially for like knowledge companies.
Mhm. Yeah.
What are you going to do? Your robots can't do that work for you. Not today anyways, not in the next 10 years. And so honestly think, and this is, I would say this about HR leaders. I would also say this about philanthropy. Right. In order for you to do better, you have to realize that you're not doing a great job right now.
Yeah.
And instead, people are just hyping each other up. They're like, HR is the most undervalued. I'm like, HR is the most undervalued because they're not doing valuable work right now.
We're not allowed to. So I
Oh,
will.
you're not, okay. Okay. In some instances, you're not allowed to, right?
Yeah.
But then I also see HR executives that are important members of the executive team. And when I see HR leaders who are important members of the executive team, I notice that they are incredibly strategic. They speak the language of leadership, which is data, which is still data, which is still innovation.
Yeah.
Right? They're not bringing a bunch of anecdotes and trying to tell a story about their impact, right? Like they're speaking the language of leadership, and more HR leaders need to speak the language of leadership.
Yeah. I will take your hard truth and accept it, but I will also push back on it. As I just said, I love doing that. I think, listen, if you're listening to this podcast, I think you are probably an HR leader who is committed to doing better and wanting to be better. I will say that. I feel really blessed for the audience who listens to this and knowing that they are fighting the hard battle at work. I will say I posted a TikTok last week about how I literally said, like, what's one thing an HR team did to make you realize you'll never trust them again? And the comments, y'all, were honestly wild. And I had a moment where I was like, I think we're moving towards there being more good HR teams in the world than bad ones. And after I posted that TikTok and got thousands of comments, I actually was like, maybe actually there's a very small percentage of good HR teams and the majority are not great ones. And
Yeah.
I think it not only has to deal with like our capabilities, but also like, does your leader, does your organization respect and trust you? And I talk about this a lot because if you're not working with a CEO who actually believes in the work you're doing, everything you do will be undermined. No matter how hard you come to the table with data, no matter how hard you have a strategic initiative, if you are not trusted and respected by the leaders at your organization, it's potentially an impossible job.
100%. Yeah,
I
100%.
don't disagree with you that we are historically one of the weakest links in the organization, mostly because a lot of our work, I think, is felt before it is like readily seen. And I do think that the average HR team potentially is not a good one. I've been on bad HR teams. I've been on good HR teams. I have led bad HR teams. I've led good HR teams. I know that all of us are capable of being the best and great team. But I know that the average day-to-day and real-life employee experience with HR is not great. Just go read the comments on that TikTok alone. Like if you're not on TikTok, you can go follow me if you really want to. I'm outrageous there. But the comments were truly heartbreaking. And there were HR people in the comments being like, hi, HR here. These are the worst comments I've ever read. And I'm like, that should tell us something.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to it, I do think we are in a situation where there are less great HR teams out there. I think the people listening to this pod who follow me know that my dream is that we actually build like a better future for work. And that means we have to show up and try our hardest to do that.
Yeah.
Which feels impossible sometimes. I literally started this season with like an episode on burnout. And now I'm like, everybody, we could do more. It's a lot.
I think everybody we can do different, because I think the catch-22 is that when you don't show up with the leadership skills that has the CEO valuing you, then every successor is caught in this cycle with other senior leaders that are like, well, HR is, they're not that important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, how do you get out from between that rock and a hard place? And that's going to require, I think, a new generation of HR leaders, which I think that we do see coming up, right?
Yes.
That are showing up very differently. They're not just paper pushers. They're true strategic partners. Yeah.
I see that like from the people who just reply to my newsletter. There's like, thank you, I'm going to go use this. Thank you, I'm going to go do that. And I'm hopeful that like in 10 years, when you and I have this discussion, because I do imagine we'll be friends 10 years from now and work totally hasn't failed, I think we can come back to this discussion in 2025 and say, I think we have better HR teams in the future than we currently have today. I just feel like it's always going to be that push to like make work better, but also to realize that like we are capable of doing it. And I think more CEOs now more than ever understand the power of HR, understand the power of retaining your employees, treating them right. Hopefully all those other things that are happening in the world don't impact us. My next question on my hot takes that we're ending with, if you had to bet money, I'm not going to make you pick an amount, what does a day in the life of work look like in 2035? So 10 years from now when you and I are still friends, what's our average day to day?
I would say 10 years out, 4-day work week, shorter, more productive days, more time for family, community, I would say for civic engagement. Yeah. And I will say that I want that. I want to bet my money on that, not just for knowledge workers or office workers. I would love to see our taxes go towards subsidizing it for blue collar workers as well, right? Like I want my taxes helping subsidize a restaurant owner, a small business owner, being able to give their employees a living wage and a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
You do not need to wait tables 7 days a week.
Ugh, one can only hope for that future, honestly. I feel that so in my soul. We had to vote on like a referendum when I was in DC about like tips and wages for the restaurant workers. And
Yeah.
I was like, they need livable wages. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Like, they're literally bringing me food. Can we not pay them
Yeah.
better to do that? And it's just very interesting to see. So I hope that's us in 10 years when you and I are still recording this pod and it's on season like 57 at that point. We'll come back to this. We're already on season 9, so like might as well keep going.
What?
I know,
Oh, I
right?
know.
Okay, I want to
It'll
end
be like the
on
Grey's Anatomy of podcasts.
I would love that. First of all, you know I love Grey's Anatomy.
I
Second of
know
all,
that. Yeah.
I would, just call me Shonda Rhimes. One could only be so lucky to be compared to the goat. Okay. I want to end on we've had so many hard truths. I genuinely believe you'll be back next season because I feel like there's each hard truth you landed could be a whole episode in itself. But is there anything that you're just genuinely excited about when you think about the future of work? Or should we all just start prepping our apocalypse bunkers? Which, by the way, I have an apocalypse backpack. So
Well, you already know this. Like we're both a little
doomsday.
preppery.
We're doomsday preppers.
Yeah, we are. So I would say, okay, listeners, in the very least, please have a go bag. Just look online. It's going to tell you what you need to put in it. But for reals, right? I actually do feel hopeful. I'm hopeful that we're going to pivot away from the bullshit work into doing work and behaving and being in a way where we're able to solve our biggest problems, right? Like 20 years from now, when you and I are getting ready to retire, hopefully we get to retire sooner than that. Right. But let's say like 2 decades out when we're getting ready to retire, I hope that we're not having to think about, oh, is my water delivery coming this week?
Yeah.
Right. I really hope that in that moment, we live in a world where people are productive but also well taken care of, that we're living like long, healthy lives, that we have really great breathable air. And not just, I think for me living in Seattle where we have incredible air quality, right? Not just here in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest, but I want that for my friends and family in New Delhi, India.
Yeah.
I want the AQI to not be 1,000 in Lahore, Pakistan, right? Or in Dubai. So that's kind of, right? When I think about the future of work, I feel hopeful that we're in this moment where there's so much awareness and people are really stepping into activism and advocacy that has the ability for us to just get out of doing crap work for the sake of what, like having something to do towards let's solve some of these problems. Right.
Yeah.
Let's have water and air that's breathable and like yummy food. Like when we're in retirement, do you not want to have chocolate? Because I want to have chocolate.
Yeah, but at the rate of climate change, we're not going to have chocolate or coffee.
Right. So I think that's the other thing for me. I'm like, we have to figure out this future of work piece, because I would hate to give up chocolate and coffee and kiwis, and I don't even know like what other yummy foods are going to go away. I'm so food motivated that alone is a reason to figure this out.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, you bring me to, I just keep thinking about this. Maybe I need to get out of my own head about this, but you talk about all these things, work, all of the other things we mentioned, from climate change to labor laws to geopolitics, all of it comes back to this work piece. And I still deeply believe in my soul, I know maybe this is a little optimistic, but that like HR being at the core of it makes us like potentially one of the most powerful executive roles and functions in any company. Like I keep coming back to that. Like I do think we have the biggest scope of work sometimes, and we have a pulse point on all these things. And the fact that people don't respect us as this strategic mastermind is so disappointing, because I think we can have a lot of impact.
Okay, so what are we manifesting? Are we saying HR is going to solve climate change? That is the Time Magazine Person of the Year in 10 years is going to be like the HR leader. Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think more HR people should go be CEOs. Like I look at Lena Nair, who was at where was she before she was the CEO of Chanel? I can't remember. But like she made the transition from HR to CEO. I think I want to see that happen more. I think I want more CEOs to turn to their HR person and say, how do we make this the best damn company anyone's ever worked at?
Yeah.
Because the talent pools are going to be slim. And I think like if you're going to build the best, if you're money motivated, you're going to build the best $1 billion company in the world, you're going to want the most talented people. And the person who I think is directly responsible for finding and retaining those people is your HR person.
I hope Beth Galletti is listening to this podcast. And then you could be like, Beth, you could pay the warehouse workers more and also mitigate the impacts of climate change. That could be you, Beth. You could be on the cover of Time magazine. HR solves climate change. I want that for her.
I love that you just went at a person. Like I'm going to go at a person in the last minutes of this podcast. I'm dead. Okay, first of all, this was so much fun for anyone listening. Like we covered a gambit of topics. Is the future of work fucked? Maybe, maybe not. You know, let's just end it there. Maybe, maybe not. But for people who are looking to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you? I always put LinkedIn in the show notes, but if you want people to reach out to you, how do you want to hear from them?
Yeah, well, because I'm a dinosaur, I'm not on TikTok and I'm really not on Instagram either. So they can go to my website, which is aparnarae.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. And that's probably the only two places that I am willing to interact with strangers at this moment in my life.
I don't like interacting with strangers on TikTok or Instagram, but I do it sometimes for fun. For the plot. Okay, this was so much fun. Thank you. You will be back again. I can't wait until you announce your new role so then I can celebrate it and be like, guess what? She's coming back to the pod. This has been such an exciting hour and a half of my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.